6 months after the Battle of Void Reach, the Galactic Council convened in their crystalline chamber for the first time since the war ended. The atmosphere was completely different from the desperate emergency sessions that had defined the conflict years. Representatives sat in their tiered circles, but now their faces showed hope instead of fear. The galaxy was healing. Trade routes had reopened. Communication networks were restored. Worlds devastated by the Devourers were being rebuilt. Life was returning to normal, but it was a new normal shaped by everything the war had taught. Today was special. The Council was meeting to formally recognize the end of the war and honor those who had fought. Every species sent their highest-ranking officials. The chamber was filled with dignitaries, military leaders, scientists, and heroes. Vexillar stood at the center, his 6 insectoid arms gesturing as he spoke about sacrifice and victory. His compound eyes no longer reflected dying civilizations. They reflected a future that had been saved by courage and determination. Supreme Commander Jake Reeves stood with other military leaders, wearing his dress uniform. The fabric bore symbols of Earth and the Allied forces. His face still carried scars from battle, and his eyes showed the weight of command. Vexillar presented him with the highest honor the Council could grant, a crystal star representing the gratitude of countless billions. Reeves accepted the honor, but immediately spoke about the crews who had died. He named ships that had been lost and commanders who made the ultimate sacrifice. He reminded everyone that victory came from free civilizations standing together, not from any single species or leader. Admiral Ryan Blake sat among the honored guests, uncomfortable in formal ceremonies but understanding their importance. He was 30 years old now, though the war had aged him in ways time could not measure. Beside him sat Kesh, his Dracon wingman and closest friend. They had survived battles that killed thousands. They had saved each other's lives more times than either could count. Their friendship represented something new in galactic civilization. Not human and alien, but warriors who trusted each other completely. Commander Alex Torres received recognition for leading the Marine forces during the assault on the Devourer Corps. He walked with a slight limp from injuries that had never fully healed, but he refused medical retirement. His work was not finished. Torres was building a permanent multi-species Marine Corps, training a new generation in tactics that combined human experience with alien capabilities. His students would ensure the galaxy never forgot how to defend itself against future threats. Dr. Lisa Chen was appointed head of the Council's Advanced Research Division. She stood before the assembly and presented plans for future technological development. Her projects focused on defensive systems, early warning networks, and technologies that promoted peace through strength. Chen had proven that human creativity combined with alien knowledge could achieve remarkable things. She intended to continue that collaboration, pushing the boundaries of science while ensuring new discoveries were used responsibly. Ambassador Kira Novak became Earth's first Secretary of Galactic Affairs. She would represent humanity in all Council decisions and work to ensure no species was ever dismissed as primitive again. Novak had been the first to believe humans could make a difference. She had stood before a council that mocked her and offered humanity service when everyone thought it was pointless. Now she stood as an equal, respected for her wisdom and proven judgment. The council announced comprehensive reforms that would change galactic governance fundamentally. Military doctrine was being completely rewritten to incorporate human strategies. The concept of honorable warfare was officially abandoned in favor of practical warfare focused on winning. Defense academies were being established where every species could learn from each other. The goal was creating a galaxy where cooperation replaced competition and threats were met with unified response. Vexillar addressed the assembly, speaking about lessons learned during the war. He admitted the council had been wrong to dismiss humanity as primitive. He said advancement was not measured by years of spaceflight or sophistication of technology. True advancement was measured by the ability to adapt, overcome challenges, and stand firm against impossible odds. By that standard, humans were among the most advanced species anyone had encountered. High Commander Zell Noth of the Draken Empire rose to speak. The warrior who had once mocked humanity now spoke with genuine respect. He told the assembly that his people had learned more from humans in 1 year than in the previous 1,000. Drakon military forces had adopted human tactical principles. Draken warriors trained alongside human marines. The cultural exchange had strengthened both civilizations. Zelnoth pledged that the Dracon Empire would stand with humanity permanently. Representatives from other species shared similar sentiments. The Luminari credited human unpredictability with teaching them flexibility. The Syntheri praised human determination for showing them that calculations could not replace courage. Every civilization had been changed by contact with humanity. They had learned that there were many paths to strength, and the human path deserved respect. Ambassador Novak was invited to give a final address. She walked to the speaking floor where months earlier she had offered humanity's desperate service. Then she had been asking for a chance. Now she spoke as an equal, sharing wisdom earned through sacrifice. Her words would be remembered throughout galactic history and carved on monuments across thousands of worlds. She began by acknowledging the cost of victory. Millions had died. Entire fleets had been destroyed. Worlds had been devastated. The price of freedom had been paid in blood and sacrifice. She said the galaxy must never forget what that price was or why paying it had been necessary. Those who died gave their lives so civilization could continue. Their sacrifice demanded that the living build something worthy of that cost. Novak spoke about lessons the war had taught. Technology alone was not enough for victory. Strategy alone could not guarantee success. Even superior numbers meant nothing without something deeper. Victory required determination to keep fighting when surrender seemed logical. It required creativity to find solutions when conventional wisdom said none existed. It required courage to face darkness even when fear was overwhelming. She explained that these traits did not belong exclusively to humans. Every species possessed capacity for determination, creativity, and courage. Humans had simply been forced to develop those traits through harder circumstances. The war taught other civilizations to access their own strength. The galaxy was stronger because every species had discovered what they were truly capable of achieving. Novak delivered a warning with her message of hope. Humanity's capacity for violence should never be taken lightly. Humans had fought the Devourers with tactics some found disturbing. They used weapons others considered too brutal. They sacrificed without hesitation when victory required it. This was what humans could do when threatened. The galaxy should remember and ensure humanity's strength was never turned against the innocent. But she also made a promise that brought tears to many present. She said humanity would always stand with their allies. Humans would fight for those unable to fight for themselves. They would defend civilization against any threat regardless of power. The galaxy had unleashed humans when conventional options failed. Humanity would remain ready if ever needed again. She concluded with words that became humanity's motto in galactic civilization. Humans did not seek war, but when war came, they would show everyone how to fight. They fought to win. They fought to protect. They fought because sometimes fighting was the only way to preserve peace. Humanity was honored to serve alongside the galaxy's great civilizations, not as primitives seeking acceptance, but as equals who earned their place through sacrifice and victory. The chamber erupted in applause lasting several minutes. Every representative stood recognizing humanity's contribution. The humans remained seated, uncomfortable with attention but understanding its significance. This was not about them personally. It was about what they represented. Hope born from determination. Victory achieved through refusal to surrender. After ceremonies ended, Reeves, Blake, Torres, Chen, and Novak gathered in a quiet observation room. Through transparent walls, they could see the galaxy stretching endlessly. Billions of stars. Trillions of lives. A civilization continuing because they refused to let it die. Reeves raised a glass to his companions. He said Earth had asked them to prove humanity deserved a place among the stars. They had done more than prove it. They showed that sometimes the last option was the best option. Being underestimated was an advantage. Humans belonged not as visitors but as full partners in galactic civilization. Chen said the real victory was not military. It was showing that cooperation between species could achieve miracles. Humans brought warfare expertise. Others contributed technology, wisdom, and unique perspectives. Together, they created something greater than any species could achieve alone. Torres said the Marines he trained proved the galaxy had changed permanently. Warriors from dozens of worlds fought with human tactics and determination while bringing their own strengths. The result was a force capable of defending against any threat. The galaxy would never be unprepared again. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Kessler Nebula, and the Allied fleet had won 6 major engagements. Every battle pushed the Devourers back further. Every victory proved that human tactics worked when applied by species willing to abandon traditional warfare concepts. The galaxy was learning that winning required sacrifice, aggression, and the determination to keep fighting no matter how bad things looked. These were lessons humanity had learned through centuries of brutal experience. And now those lessons belonged to everyone. Dr. Lisa Chen worked late in her laboratory aboard Unity Station. Surrounded by data streams and holographic projections, she had been analyzing captured devourer technology for weeks, searching for patterns that might reveal deeper secrets. Her team included scientists from 8 species, each contributing unique perspectives. Late one night, Chen noticed something that changed everything. The quantum communication signature showed a pattern, all signals traced back to a single point of origin. The hive mind was not distributed across all devourer units. It was centralized. She immediately contacted Supreme Commander Reeves and Admiral Blake. When they arrived at her lab, she showed them her findings. Somewhere in the galaxy existed a core intelligence that controlled every devourer ship. This core required massive processing power and energy. Chen had been tracking quantum signatures and energy readings for months. She could calculate its location. Reeves asked how long she needed. Chen said her team could triangulate the exact position within 5 days if they had sensor data from across the fleet. Colonel Sarah Martinez coordinated the data collection immediately. Every Allied ship began recording quantum signatures and energy patterns. Scientists analyzed the information as it arrived, building models and running calculations. Chen worked for 72 hours straight, surviving on stimulants and determination. On the 5th day, she had the answer. The Devourer core was located in a region called Void Reach, orbiting a massive black hole in uncharted space. The structure was enormous, older than anyone had predicted, and defended by the largest concentration of enemy forces in existence. The Galactic Council convened to discuss the findings. Some representatives argued for continuing the careful systematic liberation of occupied systems. Others wanted to strike at the core immediately. Ambassador Kira Novak settled the debate with characteristic human directness. She said that if you wanted to kill a snake, you cut off its head. Destroying the core would end the war instantly. Every council member voted to authorize Operation Final Dawn, a massive assault aimed at eliminating the Devourer intelligence permanently. Supreme Commander Reeves began planning the most ambitious military operation in galactic history. He needed overwhelming force. He needed perfect coordination. He needed every advantage possible because intelligence suggested the Devourers had 3 times as many ships defending the core as the entire Allied fleet possessed. The odds were terrible, but Reeves had built his career on winning battles where odds did not matter. He assembled his command, staff, and began working on a strategy that would either end the war or destroy the Allied fleet trying. The fleet gathered. At a rally point 3 jumps from Void Reach, it was the largest assembly of warships anyone had ever seen. Human dreadnoughts led the formation, battered from months of combat but still operational. Dracon assault carriers brought fresh fighter wings. Luminary mine ships coordinated tactical networks. Syntheri quantum destroyers provided precision firepower. Ships from 20 different species filled the space, each one crewed by beings who had learned to fight together. This was not a human fleet anymore. It was a galactic fleet that fought using human principles. Admiral Ryan Blake commanded the entire fighter corps from his flagship. Storm Squadron had grown from 12 pilots to thousands. Blake stood in the briefing room addressing squadron leaders from a dozen worlds. He told them that when they jumped into Void Reach, they would face more enemy fighters than they had ever encountered. The Devourers would try to overwhelm them with numbers. He reminded them that numbers meant nothing if you fought smart. Use your training. Trust your wingmen. Hit hard, move fast, and never give the enemy time to coordinate. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had survived impossible battles and expected to survive this one too. Commander Alex Torres assembled the Marine Force, which had grown to include warriors from every species. He walked through the staging area, checking equipment and talking to his troops. Draken warriors tested their powered armor. Luminary infiltrators practiced psychic coordination. Human Marines loaded weapons that seemed too large for practical use. Torres had trained them all personally. He told them their mission was simple. If the fleet could breach the core's defenses, Marines would board the structure and plant antimatter charges. They would destroy the Devourer intelligence from the inside. Dr. Chen supervised final preparations aboard the Wildcard. Her experimental ship had been upgraded with the best technology from multiple species. She had one more weapon ready, something so dangerous that her own scientific advisors questioned whether it should exist, a gravity implosion device designed to overload a black hole's accretion disk. If it worked, the energy release would vaporize everything within light years. It was a weapon of last resort. Chen hoped they would not need it, but she armed it anyway. Humans always had backup plans. The fleet jumped to void reach, and the sight that greeted them exceeded every nightmare. The Devourer core was a structure the size of a moon, a writhing mass of organic technology and mechanical systems. It pulsed with power, and sensors showed it had been growing for thousands of years. Surrounding it were layers of defensive platforms, factories building new ships continuously, and enemy forces so numerous that tactical computers could not provide accurate counts. This was the source of the Devourer plague, and it was defended like nothing else in existence. Supreme Commander Reeves stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and gave the order to attack. The Allied fleet surged forward while the Devourers launched wave after wave of defenders. The battle that erupted was beyond description. Hundreds of ships vanished in the first minutes. Space became filled with weapons fire, explosions, and debris. This was not a battle. It was mutual annihilation, and only one side could emerge victorious. Admiral Blake led Storm Squadron into the chaos. His fighters wove through enemy formations, targeting communication nodes and power conduits. Kesh flew beside him, their ships moving with coordination that came from months of flying together. Behind them, thousands of pilots from multiple worlds executed tactics that would have seemed insane before human training. They were not trying to win through superior technology. They were winning through superior aggression and absolute refusal to retreat. The Indomitable led the Dreadnought formation, pushing toward the core structure through devastating enemy fire. Reeves coordinated fleet movements from his bridge while the ship took hit after hit. Systems failed and were rerouted. Armor plating melted under directed energy weapons. Crew members died at their stations. But the ship kept moving forward because that was what human ships were designed to do. They were built to absorb punishment and keep fighting. Dr. Chen activated every experimental weapon the wildcard possessed. Gravity anomalies crushed enemy ships. Electromagnetic pulses fried their circuits despite advanced shielding. Weapons that violated conventional physics tore through formations. Her team worked in controlled chaos, fixing systems that broke from their own power while calculating the next attack. Chen had spent months preparing for this battle, and she was determined to use every tool she had developed. The breakthrough came when thousands of silence missiles detonated simultaneously. A massive bubble of quantum interference surrounded the Devourer core. For the first time, the hive mind lost its connection to defending forces. Individual ships began making uncoordinated decisions. The perfect defensive formations broke apart. The Allied fleet drove through the gaps with brutal efficiency. Commander Torres launched the marine assault with 10,000 boarding pods. The Devourers destroyed many, but enough made it through. Marines from a dozen species entered the core structure and found themselves in an environment that should not exist. The interior was part factory, part computer, and part organic nightmare. They fought through automated defenses and hostile conditions, planting demolition charges at structural weak points. Torres led his team to a critical power junction deep inside the structure. As they worked to arm antimatter charges, defense systems attacked from all directions. The battle was desperate and close range. Torres took hits that damaged his armor but kept fighting. Beside him, Kesh's brother Vorn fought with Drake and Fury enhanced by human training. They held the position long enough to complete their mission and activate the charges. Above the structure, the Allied fleet was being ground down by sheer numbers. Ships were dying despite fighting with everything they had. Reeves calculated casualty rates and knew they could not sustain this level of combat much longer. Then Chen sent a message. The antimatter charges would damage the core, but might not destroy it completely. The structure was adapting, regenerating faster than predicted. Chen asked for authorization to use the gravity implosion device. Reeves did not hesitate. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos the moment news of the human victory reached them. Representatives shouted questions and demands for explanations. Species that had existed for millions of years could not comprehend what had just happened. The tactical displays showed impossible numbers. Human casualties were severe, but they had achieved total victory against a Devourer fleet that outnumbered them 3-1. Advanced civilizations with superior technology had been crushed by smaller devourer forces. How had primitives with chemical weapons and kinetic guns succeeded, where quantum destroyers and psychic warriors had failed? Vexillar called for order, his 6 arms gesturing frantically until the chamber quieted. He invited Ambassador Kira Novak to address the council, and this time nobody laughed when she stood. Every representative watched her walk to the speaking floor with expressions ranging from respect to fear. The human who had been dismissed as insignificant now commanded the attention of the entire galactic government. She moved with the same calm confidence she had shown before, but now that confidence was backed by proven capability. High Commander Zelnoth was the first to speak. His reptilian features showed confusion and grudging respect as he demanded technical details. He wanted to know what weapons humans had used. He wanted tactical analyses and strategic breakdowns. He wanted to understand how this victory was possible. Novak listened to his questions and then provided an answer that was both simple and disturbing. She said humans won because they fought differently than every other species in the galaxy. She explained that other civilizations fought with honor and followed established rules of warfare. They conserved resources. They calculated optimal strategies. They tried to minimize casualties and achieve victory through superior technology. Humans had learned through thousands of years of brutal experience that none of those concepts mattered when survival was at stake. Humans fought to win, and they used whatever methods worked. If that meant using primitive weapons, humans used primitive weapons. If that meant sacrificing ships, humans sacrificed ships. If that meant boarding enemy vessels in the middle of combat, humans boarded enemy vessels. Novak described human military history in detail that made many council members visibly uncomfortable. She talked about wars where cities were burned and populations slaughtered. She described weapons designed to cause maximum suffering. She explained how humans had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times but learned critical lessons from each near extinction. Every war taught humans something new about killing efficiently. Every defeat taught humans how to win the next battle. By the time humans reached the stars, they had accumulated 10,000 years of warfare knowledge. A representative from the Luminary Collective asked if humanity was dangerous to the Council. Novak's answer was carefully measured. She said humans were loyal to their allies and honorable in their agreements. But when humans identified something as a threat, they dealt with that threat using every available tool. The Devourers were a threat to galactic civilization. The Devourers learned what happened when humans decided something needed to be destroyed. She let the implication hang in the air. Cross humanity's allies and you became a threat too. Vexillar made a formal proposal. He asked if humanity would lead a counter-offensive against the Devourers. He proposed promoting General Jake Reeves to Supreme Commander of all Allied forces. He suggested giving Earth access to Council technology and resources. He recommended recognizing humanity as a full Council member with voting rights. The Chamber voted immediately and the result was unanimous. Every species voted to accept human leadership. Even Zelnoth, who had mocked humans just days earlier, voted in favor. Novak accepted but added conditions that showed humans understood negotiation as well as warfare. She said humanity would command the military campaign, but other species must contribute forces. Human tactics would be adopted fleet-wide, which meant other species would learn to fight in ways they found uncomfortable. Most importantly, after the war ended, the Council must ensure no species was ever dismissed as primitive again. Every civilization had value. Every species deserved respect. The Council agreed without debate. General Reeves was summoned to a massive new command station called Unity. The station was built specifically to coordinate military operations across the entire galaxy. Reeves arrived with Colonel Sarah Martinez, who was immediately promoted to Chief of Fleet Operations. Her job was integrating forces from dozens of species into a unified command structure. It seemed impossible, but Martinez had built her career doing impossible things. She began working immediately, studying the capabilities of every alien ship and determining how to use them most effectively. The first challenge was cultural. Draken warriors believed in honor and direct confrontation. Luminary psychics valued precision and minimal casualties. Syntheri strategists relied on advanced calculations and careful planning. Humans believed in winning by any means necessary. Reeves spent days explaining that war was not about honor or elegance. War was about making the enemy stop fighting, and the fastest way to do that was hitting them harder and faster than they expected. Some alien commanders understood immediately. Others struggled to adapt. Captain Ryan Blake, now promoted to Admiral Blake, took command of a mixed-species fighter wing called Storm Squadron. His pilots came from 12 different worlds, each bringing unique advantages. Draken pilots had superior reflexes. Luminari pilots could sense enemy movements through psychic awareness. Syntheri pilots processed information faster than any organic brain should manage. But they all lacked something humans possess naturally: aggression combined with creativity. Blake's job was teaching them to think like predators instead of soldiers. His best student was a young Draken pilot named Kesh. The warrior had incredible reflexes and strength, but had been taught to fight with restraint and honor. Blake showed him recordings of human pilots from Earth's wars. Men and women who flew primitive aircraft held together by mettle and determination. They took insane risks. They invented tactics in the moment. They trusted instinct over calculation. Kesh watched these recordings and something changed in his thinking. He began flying like a human, aggressive and unpredictable. His kill count tripled within weeks. Dr. Lisa Chen led a combined team of human and alien scientists developing new weapons. With access to council technology and human innovation, they created hybrid systems that combined the best of both approaches. Chen's greatest breakthrough came when she discovered a critical weakness in the Devourer hive mind. The enemy relied on constant quantum communication between all units. Disrupt that communication, and individual ships became much less effective. They could still fight, but without coordination they were vulnerable. Working with Luminari researchers who understood quantum mechanics in ways humans were only beginning to grasp, Chen developed a new weapon class. Silence missiles emitted pulses that jammed quantum entanglement over large areas. The first test was conducted against a captured Devourer ship. The moment the missile detonated, the ship's coordination with other units vanished. It began operating independently, and its effectiveness dropped by 70%. Chen immediately ordered mass production. Supreme Commander Reeves planned the first major Allied offensive with care. The target was the Kessler Nebula, where Devourers had established a forward staging area. Most commanders would avoid fighting in a nebula because the gas and dust interfered with sensors and communication. Reeves chose the location specifically because humans excelled at fighting in poor conditions. He assembled the largest military fleet in recorded history. Human dreadnoughts formed the core. Dracon carriers brought thousands of fighters. Luminary mine ships provided tactical coordination. Syntheri destroyers added long-range firepower. Before the operation began, Reeves addressed the entire Allied fleet. He told them they were about to attack an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for years. He said the Devourers expected them to be cautious and careful. The Devourers were about to learn that this fleet did not believe in caution. This fleet had been trained by humans, and humans believed in hitting first, hitting hard, and never giving the enemy time to recover. He finished by saying that after today the Devourers would no longer be the hunters. They would become the hunted. The fleet jumped into the Kessler Nebula in 3 coordinated waves. The first wave appeared directly in front of Devourer positions and immediately opened fire. The Devourers responded by moving to engage what they calculated was the main force. That was when the second wave appeared on their flank. Fast attack craft from multiple species streaked through the nebula, using human tactics of speed and aggression. Pilots from different worlds flew in coordinated chaos, each species contributing their natural advantages. Before the Devourers could adapt their formation, the third wave arrived. Dr. Chen's wildcard and ships carrying silence missiles appeared throughout the battlefield and fired simultaneously. Thousands of missiles detonated, creating massive zones where quantum communication simply stopped working. The hive mind's coordination collapsed. Individual Devourer ships found themselves alone, confused, unable to share tactical data or receive coordinated commands. They were no longer fighting as a unify. Earth's orbital shipyards stretched across the sky like massive metal cities, each 1 kilometers long and bristling with construction equipment. Inside these industrial complexes, warships were being prepared for immediate deployment. These were not elegant vessels like the ones other species built. Human ships looked brutal and functional, designed by engineers who cared only about 2 things. Could the ship take damage and keep fighting? Could it deliver enough firepower to destroy anything in its path? Every human warship was covered in armor plating that seemed excessive, weapons that appeared too large, and backup systems for the backup systems. General Jake Reeves stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Indomitable, watching through the massive viewport as the fleet assembled in formation. He was 51 years old, with gray hair at his temples and a face marked by scars from old battles. 3 decades of military service had taught him everything about warfare. He had fought in border conflicts, commanded peacekeeping missions, and spent years studying every military engagement in human history. Now he was about to lead humanity's entire fleet into a battle that everyone else thought was unwinnable. The thought made him smile. Colonel Sarah Martinez worked at her station, coordinating the complex logistics of moving hundreds of ships into proper formation. She was a genius at organization, capable of tracking thousands of details simultaneously and making sure everything happened in the right order. She had spent weeks planning this deployment, calculating fuel requirements, ammunition loads, spare parts, medical supplies, and 100 other factors that determined whether a fleet could function effectively. Every ship knew its position. Every crew knew its assignment. The humans were ready. Reeves opened a fleet-wide communication channel. His voice reached every human aboard every ship. He told them the galaxy expected them to fail. He told them other species thought humans were too primitive to matter. He told them the Council believed humanity would be destroyed within hours of engaging the Devourers. Then he told them why that belief was wrong. Humans had survived every challenge Earth threw at them. They had endured ice ages, plagues, predators, and extinction events. They had spent 10,000 years fighting each other and learning from every battle. Today they would show the galaxy what all those lessons had taught them. The fleet jumped to faster than light speed. Space twisted around them as they crossed distances that would take conventional travel years to cover. When they emerged in the Threshold 7 system, they found themselves in what would become either humanity's greatest victory or final stand. 3 planets orbited a dying red star. 2 asteroid belts drifted through the system. Everything was painted in shades of deep red from the star's light. It was not a beautiful system, but Reeves looked at it and saw a perfect battlefield. He immediately ordered preparations that would have seemed insane to conventional military strategists. Human engineers swarmed over the asteroids, installing mass drivers that could launch rocks at incredible speeds. Thousands of automated drones were scattered throughout the system, each one programmed to attack any ship matching Devourer signatures. Supply caches were hidden in unlikely locations. Sensor networks were deployed to give advance warning. Most importantly, Dr. Lisa Chen and her team began installing experimental gravity well generators on several moons. Dr. Chen was 38 years old, with long black hair usually tied back and glasses she wore by choice rather than necessity. She was brilliant in ways that made other scientists uncomfortable. She developed theories that conventional physics said were impossible, then proved those theories with working prototypes. Her gravity wells were designed to trap ships in normal space, preventing faster-than-light travel. Once activated, any ship caught in the field would be stuck until the generators were destroyed or turned off. Chen supervised the installation personally, making sure every detail was perfect. Captain Ryan Blake ran final checks on his fighter in the launch bay of a carrier. He was 29 years old with sandy blonde hair and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. He commanded Scorpion Wing, 12 pilots who had trained together until they could anticipate each other's moves without communication. Their fighters were small and fast, packed with weapons that seemed too powerful for such compact craft. Blake knew his job would be to create chaos in enemy formations, and he was very good at creating chaos. The Galactic Council had sent observers to document humanity's last stand. They arrived in a small ship and took position at the edge of the system, their sensors recording everything. The observers watched human preparations with confusion. Nothing the humans were doing made sense by conventional military standards. Why waste time weaponizing asteroids when proper missiles were more effective? Why scatter primitive drones instead of using sophisticated guided systems? Why build gravity wells when defensive shields would be more practical? The observers sent reports describing human tactics as chaotic and poorly planned. Vexillar read these reports and felt his earlier assessment confirmed. The humans were brave but clearly did not understand modern warfare. He revised his evacuation schedules, assuming human resistance would be even briefer than initially calculated. He felt genuine sadness that such a determined species would be wiped out so quickly, but he could not change reality. The Devourers were simply too powerful. 3 days after the human fleet arrived, long-range sensors detected the enemy approaching. The Devourer fleet was massive beyond anything humans had faced before. Thousands of geometric ships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. Each vessel was the size of a small city, their hulls covered in weapons and harvesting equipment. They moved in perfect formation, synchronized by the hive mind that controlled every unit. The fleet's sole purpose was to consume everything in this system and move on to the next. The observers immediately transmitted warnings that the humans were facing impossible odds. Vexillar watched the tactical displays and calculated that humanity had perhaps 3 hours before complete annihilation. He began final preparations for core world evacuations, grateful that the humans would at least buy a few days of time with their sacrifice. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Reeves watched the Devourer fleet with calm assessment. He had studied reports from every engagement the Council forces had fought. He knew how the Devourers operated. They relied on overwhelming numbers and perfect coordination. They analyzed enemy capabilities and adapted their tactics. They were efficient, logical, and utterly predictable. That predictability was their weakness, and Reeves intended to exploit it ruthlessly. The Devourers detected the human fleet and performed standard tactical analysis. They identified human weapons as primitive kinetic and chemical systems. They calculated human shields as inadequate against Devourer firepower. They projected total victory within 3 standard hours. The hive mind prepared attack formations designed to sweep through the system and eliminate resistance with maximum efficiency. Everything proceeded according to analyzed patterns from previous engagements. What the Devourers did not account for was that humans did not follow anyone else's patterns. Reeves gave an order that shocked the Council observers. Before the Devourers could finish their formation, before they could establish optimal attack positions, Reeves ordered every ship to fire everything immediately. The observers watched in horror as the humans apparently panicked and wasted all their ammunition in an uncoordinated barrage. But it was not panic. It was strategy. Hundreds of nuclear weapons detonated simultaneously, filling space with radiation and electromagnetic pulses. Railguns fired streams of tungsten rods accelerated to incredible speeds. Missiles armed with antimatter warheads streaked through the vacuum. The humans were not trying to conserve resources or fight efficiently. They were trying to overwhelm the enemy with more firepower than the Devourers could process or defend against. The Devourer formations broke apart as ships took unexpected damage. The hive mind attempted to recalculate, but before it could adapt, Captain Blake led Scorpion Wing through the chaos. The fighters moved with impossible precision, targeting communication nodes and sensor arrays. Human pilots endured gravitational forces that would kill most other species, pulling maneuvers that seemed to violate physics. They were not trying to destroy the massive Devourer ships. They were trying to blind them and disrupt their coordination. Dr. Chen activated the wildcard, her experimental weapons platform. The ship began generating localized gravity anomalies that crushed Devourer vessels like empty containers. Electromagnetic pulses fried circuits that were supposed to be shielded. Weapons based on theories other species considered too dangerous to weaponize tore through enemy formations. Chen's team worked frantically, repairing systems that damaged themselves from their own power output while calculating trajectories for the next attack. The battle that the Council expected to last 3 hours was still raging after 8. Human ships were being destroyed, their sacrifice buying time for others to reposition and counterattack. But every destroyed human ship took multiple Devourer vessels with it. The exchange rate was far better than anything the advanced galactic civilizations had achieved. The observers sent increasingly frantic reports trying to explain how the crystalline chamber floated in the empty space between galaxies, its transparent walls reflecting light from distant stars. Inside the massive structure, representatives from dozens of alien civilizations sat in circular tiers, their faces showing fear and desperation. This was the Galactic Council, and they were meeting because they were losing a war they could not win. The holographic display in the center showed star systems going dark one by one, each representing billions of lives consumed by an enemy called the Devourers. The mechanical hive mind was unstoppable, turning entire worlds into raw materials for building more ships. Every military power in the galaxy had tried to stop them and failed. Vexillar stood at the center, his 6 insectoid arms moving as he gestured toward the display. He was the council speaker, and his compound eyes reflected the dying light of civilizations. His voice carried across the chamber as he explained how the Draken Empire's finest warships had been destroyed in 3 days. The Luminary Collective's psychic warriors could not affect machines with no minds to attack. The Synthera Union's quantum weapons erased individual ships, but the Devourers simply built more faster than they could be destroyed. The projections were clear and terrifying. The enemy would reach the galactic core within 6 cycles, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop them. High Commander Zelnoth of the Dracon Empire slammed his clawed hand on the console in front of him. His reptilian face showed pure frustration as he demanded answers. Surely someone had an idea that might work. The chamber fell silent. These were species that had existed for millions of years, that had built empires spanning thousands of star systems. They had knowledge, technology, and resources beyond measure. But they had no answer to the Devourers. Every conventional strategy had been tried and had failed. The silence stretched on, heavy with the weight of inevitable extinction. Ambassador Kira Novak stood up from her seat in the lower tier. She was human, representing a species that most council members barely acknowledged existed. Humans had only achieved faster than light travel in the last 100 years. Their technology was considered primitive, their weapons crude, their military experience limited to conflicts on their own world. Most species in the council did not understand why humans had even been granted observer status at these meetings. They were too new, too backward, too insignificant to matter in galactic affairs. Zelnoth saw Novak standing and made a sound that resembled laughter. He asked why the primitive human was wasting their time when the greatest minds in the galaxy had found no solution. Several other representatives made similar dismissive comments. What could humans possibly contribute when species thousands of years more advanced had failed? Novak remained standing, her expression calm and patient, waiting for the mockery to end. She was a small figure compared to the towering aliens around her, but she showed no sign of being intimidated. Vexillar raised one hand for silence. He believed in showing courtesy even during desperate times, and he told Novak she could speak. His tone suggested he expected nothing useful, but protocol demanded he allow her to address the council. Novak walked down to the speaking floor, her boots making soft sounds on the crystal surface. She was 42 years old with short brown hair and green eyes that had seen too much war. She carried herself with quiet confidence that seemed out of place for someone representing such a young species. She spoke simply and directly. Earth wanted to help. The chamber immediately filled with laughter and scornful comments. Zelnoth demanded to know what humans thought they could accomplish. Human ships were outdated by galactic standards. Human weapons used chemical reactions and kinetic force instead of advanced energy systems. Human tactics were untested against any serious military power. Why would anyone believe humans could succeed where far superior species had failed? The mockery continued for several minutes while Novak waited patiently. When the noise finally died down, she explained her proposal. Humanity would deploy its forces to hold a strategic choke point system. They would buy time for the Council to evacuate core worlds. They would stand between the Devourers and the heart of galactic civilization. The laughter grew even louder. This was clearly a joke. Human forces would be annihilated within hours. What made her think primitives with crude technology could stop an enemy that had crushed the galaxy's most powerful militaries? Novak's expression remained unchanged. She began speaking about Earth's history, and her words slowly silenced the chamber. She explained that while most species evolved in peaceful environments, humanity fought for survival every single day. Earth was not a gentle world. Humans evolved alongside predators that hunted them. They survived ice ages that should have killed them all. They endured diseases that wiped out entire populations. They faced 5 mass extinction events and survived each one. By the time humans developed intelligence, they had already learned the most important lesson. Never give up no matter how bad things look. She continued by describing human civilization. 10,000 years of nearly constant warfare. Empires rising and falling. Technologies developed specifically for killing other humans. Weapons designed to cause maximum death and destruction. Nuclear bombs used against their own cities. Chemical weapons that melted flesh. Biological agents that killed millions. The galaxy looked at human history and saw barbarism. Humans looked at their history and saw lessons learned the hard way. Every war taught them something new about survival. Every defeat showed them how to win next time. Novak explained that humans did not fight the way other species fought. Other species had concepts of honor, rules of engagement, ethical considerations. Humans had learned that war was not about honor. War was about winning by any means necessary. When humans fought, they fought dirty. They used every advantage. They exploited every weakness. They did not stop until the enemy was completely defeated or they were dead. Usually both. The chamber had gone completely silent. Even Zelnoth was listening now. Vexillar asked what humanity wanted in return for this sacrifice. Novak replied that humans wanted nothing except the opportunity to prove that being primitive did not mean being weak. She said the council clearly expected humans to die in this battle. That was acceptable. Humans understood the odds, but humans had one advantage that no other species seemed to possess. When humans were told something was impossible, they did it anyway out of pure spite. The vote was called immediately. Every council member voted to accept humanity's offer, not because they believed humans could win, but because they had no other options left. Vexillar provided coordinates to a system called Threshold 7. It was a natural choke point where any fleet moving toward the inner galaxy would have to pass. The Devourers would come through that system. Through the humans waiting there, Vexillar formally authorized humanity to use any methods necessary to defend the system. He did not elaborate on what those methods might be because he assumed it would not matter. The humans would be destroyed quickly, but if they could delay the Devourers even for a few days, it would give the Council time to evacuate their most important worlds. The loss of one insignificant species was acceptable if it saved countless others. Novak accepted the authorization without ceremony or speeches. She turned and walked toward the exit, followed by the small group of humans who had accompanied her. As the crystalline doors sealed behind them, she activated her communication device and sent a brief message. It was time. On the other end, General Jake Reeves received the message and smiled. He had been waiting for this moment. He gave the order to mobilize every ship, every weapon, every soldier Earth possessed, back in the Council chamber. Vexillar stared at the holographic display showing Threshold 7. He gave the system 3 days at most before it fell to the Devourers. He began making arrangements for the mass evacuation of core worlds, calculating that the human sacrifice might buy them a week if they were extremely fortunate. He felt a moment of pity for the humans who were about to die, but that pity was mixed with pragmatic acceptance. Some species had to be sacrificed so others could survive. What Vexillar did not know was that humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario since the day they learned other species existed. Every human warship had been designed with one purpose in mind. Every weapon had been tested and refined. Every tactic had been developed based on thousands of years of brutal warfare against themselves. The humans were not going to Threshold 7 to die heroically. They were going to show the galaxy what happened when you gave humans a fight they could not afford to lose. The Galactic Council had just made the most important decision in their history. They had unleashed the humans. Now they would discover what that truly meant.